Hello and welcome to Heads Up. How well can your child sit still, focus and pay attention? Is he too impulsive, boisterous and gets easily distracted? Today on the show, we're taking a close look at Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder or ADHD, a much misunderstood behavioral condition that affects the learning process in children. We're also going to take a close look at what are schools doing to handle the issues associated with the condition. First up, let's try and understand what is ADHD. A much misunderstood condition. In fact, ADHD or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder may not even be a familiar term for many. And this is what it looks like. This is a mixed classroom comprised of kids without any learning difference and those diagnosed with ADHD. It is difficult to spot the difference, and that's because a child with ADHD doesn't look different than other kids his or her age in any aspect.
We have to understand that the symptoms of ADHD, such as impulsivity, hyperactivity, being inattentive, are also seen in children at this point of time, at this age. What makes it ADHD is the group of symptoms all put together, or so to say the syndrome, and this is clearly in excess of what you would see in a kid of a similar age. So the symptoms are much more in excess, the symptoms are very debilitating, and such children can be identified, and they are often seen as more naughty as compared to others, more hyper as compared to others, but the parents and the general public does not have an understanding that this could be a disorder in itself which can be treated.
And it's just ADHD.
Bindu Menon, an educationist and mother of a young boy who has been diagnosed with ADHD, mistook the signs just like many others.
And he started school pretty early, and so one of the first observations actually came in from the school, wherein they found it very difficult to contain him to one place. And I think the old notion is that because it's a boy and they tend to be naughty, so the perception what people gave and what I also had was that because he's a boy, he's naughty, and then they tend to explore. But I think over a period of time it started getting a little bit concerning, because there were issues related to it, because there was nothing that caught his attention. He was always on the move, he wanted to explore. So, and as I think as a parent, you see a child growing up and your own concerns are there, which is related to safety, which is related to security. So then I knew that there was an issue in hand and we had to get a professional help.
That's great, yeah.
Disorganized, boisterous, impulsive, easily distracted. Seemingly engaged in a conversation or activity, but has a million other ideas streaming into his or her mind. Traits or behavioral pattern typical of many young children. So when does it become a cause for concern?
When the hyperactivity and attention deficit starts interfering in the way a child is occupying his time and space. For example, it is interfering in the child's learning. It is interfering in the child's social skills with the others, right? It is interfering in him acquiring new skills that are age appropriate. Then ADHD is interfering with his development. That is when it is, gives you reason for concern.
ADHD is not a learning challenge, but can interfere with the learning process. Studies show 30 to 50% of kids and adults with ADHD also have a specific learning disability.
The child may have problems in writing, the child may have problems in grammar and spelling, the child may have specific problems in mathematics. An ADHD child need not have these problems. The problem with the ADHD child is that there is a basic problem in attention. He is unable to have a sustained attention and is very impulsive and is very hyperactive. Although approximately 1/3 of people who have ADHD have a coexisting learning disability as well. So 1/3 of children with ADHD will have a learning disability as well, but the disorders are different and distinct. The underlying problem is very different.
There is evidence that ADHD runs in families. Studies have shown 25% children diagnosed with the condition have at least one relative with ADHD. The rate of discovery grows significantly higher among monozygotic or identical twins.
It has been found that if an individual in the family has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, the chances of another family member having the disorder are high. So monozygotic twins, as we call them, if one twin has ADHD, the chances of the other twin having it are close to 50 to 90%. If a parent has ADHD, one of the children, the chances of a child having ADHD is close to 50%.
Experts are of the opinion that diagnosis at the earliest, professional help, positive behavioral intervention, inclusive education systems can go a long way in making sure a kid diagnosed with ADHD gets a shot at living up to his full potential. A child with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder might find it extremely difficult to focus on studies for a sustained period of time. He might be good at sports, can take active interest in theatre and play guitar very well. But no matter what you do as a parent to make him focus on studies, you fail every time. We spoke with parents to find out what are the everyday challenges that they face in helping their kids learn better. As is the case with many other learning differences, stigma and stereotype associated with ADHD is so strong, parents worry about how society will see their child and are understandably anxious.
These days it's a very common thing. Like every second or third child is facing this. And I feel it should be diagnosed as early as possible so that measures are taken by parents and it is no harm.
Being the parent of a child with ADHD can be challenging. Sometimes finishing a lesson can be a major struggle, but it can be handled and treated early.
It's such a borderline, it's something that you really can't pinpoint. Only when you start seeing that academics are becoming an issue and why. Even with tuition, why is the sustained attention not there? That is when you start questioning that maybe there's a problem with the attention. Otherwise, every other activity, sport, extracurricular, be it swimming, football, dramatics, participating in anything, he's one of the best. I mean, he's very, very good at that. But at the time when he sits on the desk with his paper, books, reading or an essay writing activity, that's when you realize that there needs to be a different approach and he needs help.
Seeking help of experts as soon as possible helps a great deal in managing the issue.
As your child grows up and goes to higher classes where the academic pressure increases, that's the time it really pops up. And that's the time you need help, or you need to deal with the child in a different way, and you need to bring in few experienced people where you can take help from, or you can guide them in a certain way, or plan their day in a certain way where they need a little more structure, a little more time management, because every activity that they tend to do takes more time.
Experts often advise parents of kids with ADHD to follow a structured but flexible approach while dealing with the academic aspect of a kid's life.
Because children occupy mainly schools and homes, school teachers and the parents together can decide what are those techniques that will be best to retain this child within their classroom and to make this child successful, to make the child feel successful within whatever role he is playing at that age, of a student, of a musician, whatever the child is involved in, he has to become successful, and that is the role of the teachers and the parents.
In today's age of cutthroat competition and the necessity of being a part of the rat race, difficult to do as it may sound, it's important not to pressurize the child. Instead, help him cope with his difficulty and encourage him to do better.
for every parent that advises that I think one shouldn't keep high expectations. I think one should leave it to the child, because the child does sense pressure. Earlier I used to be very hyper about the whole thing, that how will he manage, how will he manage, how is he going to cope up in school. It's still, I mean, it's a concern. So the moment there's a 2-mark improvement in a test, we try and give him positive affirmation. That great, you got better than last time, fantastic.
Two of the most important places of learning for any child are home and school. While we just heard from parents who have kids with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder on how they are handling the learning issues associated with the condition, it's time for us to take a look at what schools are doing to help children with ADHD do better academically. With growing understanding about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, schools across the country are gearing up to be able to offer learning to kids with special needs.
Most schools are pretty aware now. They are definitely open to change and understand, the need for becoming inclusive. So inclusion is, we recognize the need of the child and we prepare and evolve as teachers in schools to be able to work with the child and be able to provide the right kind of intervention so that the child is successful.
A change in the traditional outlook towards learning, experts say, will go a long way.
I think as educators, we need to change the way we look at ADD or ADHD. The minute we look at it as a deficit, we've already limited the child. Dr. Edward Hallowell, who's a renowned child and adult psychiatrist, a New York Times best-selling author, and a leading authority in the field of ADHD, he takes the 3 main symptoms of ADHD, distractibility, impulsivity, and hyperactivity, and he turns them and looks at them through a positive prism. He says, if you take distractibility and turn it on its head, you get curiosity. If you take impulsivity and turn it on its head, you get creativity. If you take hyperactivity and turn it on its head, you get energy, lots of positive energy. So it's our job as educators to take and help children control their minds so that they can be curious, so that they can be creative and use all of their energy.
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder can manifest in various ways. For instance, all kids with ADHD will not necessarily be distracted by same things or causes.
There are many forms of distractibility. You can have children with visual distractibility. These are children that are distracted by everything that they see in their environment. The charts on the wall are very distracting to them. They might start paying too much attention to every detail on that chart. What the teacher is wearing in the classroom might be too distracting. The ring on her finger, the way her hair is moving, might be too distracting for this child. Another form of distractibility can be auditory distractibility. This child will pay too much attention to all of the sounds in their environment and won't be able to tune them out. This is the child that will be focusing on the humming of the fan, or the bird chirping outside, or the children having a conversation in the corridor. You can have children with tactile distractibility. So as educators, we need to be aware of the kinds of distractibility and the form of distractibility that our student is experiencing.
It's key to remember a child with ADHD can be just as successful as a child without it. A sensitive support system in the form of understanding parents and educators, medical help if required, can help him realize his full potential.
There are a lot of successful people all over the world who say that they have been successful because of their ADHD, not despite ADHD. Some examples of famous people would be Tom Cruise, Charles Schwab, David Neilman. Unfortunately, we don't have as many examples of Indians because there's still a lot of stigma associated with learning differences, and people think of learning differences as a disability rather than as having hidden gifts.
It's time for us to slip into a quick break, but you don't go anywhere as there is a lot more coming up on the other side. Welcome back. Now I'm joined by Ms. Sonia Philip, who's been working as an educator with kids with learning differences for over 3 decades. Hello, Ms. Sonia Philip. Thanks for talking to us. Ms. Philip, do tell us, first of all, what inspired you to start working with kids who have learning differences?
It's actually my own personal journey. I was a regular educator teaching in a school, in a mainstream school, but it was my son who we observed was in a mainstream school but was not really succeeding. He looked like all children, but he didn't learn like them. It's due to understanding my own child's learning profile that took me to the United States to do another postgraduate degree in understanding children with learning differences.
Let's talk about specifically ADHD now. So dispel it for us. What is ADHD? How does it manifest? What effects it has on kids?
So it's a label. And in my own experience and practice, we don't really believe that label is helpful. It's not helpful to the child, it's not helpful to the teacher, it's not helpful to the parents. So it's more important to really understand what it is. And it's not one thing. You cannot say ADHD is one and manifests itself in the same way for all children. So it's a variance and diversity in attentional difficulties. So it's more important to look at each child and know what is the phenomena of weakness in attention I see in this particular child, because we know it's a plethora of differences that you would have.
Can you give us an example of that?
Sure. You can have children who would have difficulties with the energy that their mind is able to pull together to do a task. We call it mental effort. It's like the fuel your car needs to be able to go from point A to point B. So similarly for children, when they are asked to attend to a task, they need their mental energy, the fuel. And for some children, that aspect of attention is weak. So they may start out very well, but soon run out of gas. So these are children you'll see, they start out doing their work, but then soon are stretching, are fidgeting, are sprawled on their tables. That's one example of weakness in mental energy as a component of weak attention. Another example can be, you'll see children who are unable to really know what's important when they are being exposed to information. I mean, we are being bombarded with information all the time, but to know what is really important, what's the focal central information that's important and what's the kind of peripheral information. So when I'm reading a chapter, I need to know what was the main idea of what I read, and I don't need to know all the incidental things that happened. So children who are unable to summarize something, they are struggling with that aspect of attention, to know what was important, what is not so important. Similarly, when they have to study for a test, are we going to study everything, or what are the main things I need to be able to understand for a test? Attention plays a role in that. Or children who are unable to know where the focus should be, because they don't know how to manage what's most important, they also get distracted. And so there's distractibility, which is another aspect. Now there are many kinds of distractibilities in children. Are they being distracted by the sounds and noises they're hearing? Are they being distracted visually in a classroom? So various kinds of distractibilities. You also see children whose mind and attention can focus in one way and not another. So if information is presented like you and I are talking, maybe your mind will tune off. It's too much sound. But if I present the same thing visually through a chart, your mind will get alert. So there are many different ways that you see how weak attention is manifested. But the hallmark of weak attention is inconsistency. You will see children who are inconsistent in their performance, and it's so deceptive because one day they are able to spell the word well, and in that same paragraph, next sentence, the same word, they've misspelled it. Or you say, let's do these 10 sums, and 4 sums are correct, but 5th one is wrong, and then 6th and 7th are correct, so there's inconsistency. It's like the tuning in and out of the mind that's happening.
Thanks for talking to us, Ms. Phillip. Thank you.
Pleasure.
On that note, we will wrap up today's show. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.